For decades, the American dream was built around one simple promise. If you worked hard, stayed disciplined, and played by the rules, you could build a stable life in the United States. You could buy a home, raise a family, save for retirement, and slowly move into the middle class. That belief became one of the most powerful ideas in modern history. Millions of people around the world saw America as the ultimate place for opportunity and financial freedom. But today, something feels very different. Across the country, millions of Americans are starting to feel like that dream is slipping away. People are working longer hours than ever before, taking second jobs, cutting back on basic necessities, and still falling behind financially every single month. And now, a growing number of families are asking a terrifying question. Is the American dream quietly dying? Just a few years ago, many households already felt financial pressure. But after the pandemic, the cost of living exploded across almost every part of the economy. Grocery bills increased dramatically. Gas prices surged. Rent climbed to record highs in many major cities. Healthcare costs became even more difficult to manage. At the same time, mortgage rates jumped so aggressively that millions of Americans completely gave up on the idea of buying a home. A house that once seemed affordable suddenly became financially impossible even for families with decent incomes and strong FICO scores. The result is that many younger Americans no longer see homeownership as a realistic milestone. For previous generations, buying a home was considered a normal part of adulthood. Today, it feels more like a luxury reserved for a shrinking group of people. One of the biggest reasons behind this crisis is inflation. Over the past several years, prices increased at one of the fastest rates Americans have seen in decades. The Federal Reserve responded by aggressively raising interest rates in an attempt to slow inflation down. While higher rates can reduce inflation over time, they also make borrowing money far more expensive for ordinary people. Credit card interest rates exploded. Car payments increased. Mortgage costs skyrocketed. Small businesses faced more pressure from rising debt expenses. Millions of Americans suddenly found themselves trapped between rising prices and rising interest rates at the exact same time. And for families already living paycheck to paycheck, even small increases in monthly bills became financially devastating. What makes the situation even worse is that wages simply have not kept up with the real cost of living. Many workers received small raises, but those salary increases were nowhere near enough to match inflation. In practical terms, people are earning more dollars while actually becoming poorer in real purchasing power. Families that once felt comfortably middle class are now struggling to maintain the same lifestyle they had only a few years ago. Parents are delaying vacations, canceling subscriptions, avoiding restaurants, and cutting spending wherever possible just to stay financially stable. Emergency savings are disappearing. Contributions to 401k retirement accounts are slowing down. More Americans are relying on credit cards simply to survive everyday expenses like groceries, utilities, and insurance payments. Right now, credit card debt in the United States is sitting near historic highs. Millions of Americans are carrying balances month after month while interest rates on those cards continue climbing above 20% in some cases. That creates an extremely dangerous financial cycle because once debt begins compounding faster than income grows, escaping becomes incredibly difficult. Many households are quietly entering financial survival mode without openly talking about it. On social media, people still appear successful. They post luxury vacations, expensive apartments, and designer purchases online. But behind the scenes, many are struggling with debt, financial anxiety, and growing economic uncertainty. Social media has created enormous pressure for people to appear financially successful even while privately falling apart. At the same time, economic uncertainty is spreading across the workforce. Major corporations, especially inside the technology sector, have already laid off thousands of employees. Artificial intelligence is creating additional fear as workers worry about long-term job security. Americans are watching companies cut costs, reduce hiring, and automate positions while the cost of living continues climbing higher. Even people with stable jobs no longer feel financially secure. And that psychological shift may be one of the biggest warning signs inside the economy today. When people stop feeling financially safe, they spend less money, avoid large purchases, and become far more cautious about the future. Meanwhile, the broader economy depends heavily on consumer spending. The American economy runs on people continuing to buy homes, finance cars, travel, and spend money throughout the system. But when consumers run out of savings and max out debt, the entire economy becomes vulnerable. If Americans begin dramatically reducing spending because they simply cannot afford life anymore, economic growth could slow down much faster than expected. That is why economists are becoming increasingly concerned about the long-term health of the middle class. Because once the middle class begins weakening, the foundation of the economy itself starts becoming unstable. What makes this moment especially frustrating for many Americans is that they feel like they did everything they were told to do. They went to school. They worked full-time jobs. They paid taxes. They tried building good credit. They contributed to retirement accounts and followed traditional financial advice. And yet, despite doing all the so-called right things, many still feel like they are losing ground every single year. The traditional path toward financial stability no longer feels guaranteed the way it once did for previous generations. That growing disconnect is fueling frustration across the country because millions of ordinary people feel like the system itself is becoming unaffordable. Still, despite all the fear surrounding the economy, some experts believe the situation can eventually stabilize if inflation continues slowing and wages begin catching up again. Technology could improve productivity. Interest rates may decline in the future. New industries could create better-paying jobs over time. But right now, millions of Americans are simply trying to survive 1 month at a time while hoping life eventually becomes easier. And that may be the biggest sign that the American dream is changing. Because when survival replaces stability, and financial stress becomes part of everyday life, people begin losing faith in the future itself. The American dream was never just about money. It was about the belief that hard work could build a better life. But for millions of Americans today, that belief is starting to disappear.